Hello, my name is Father Lawrence Jagfeld. I am a Franciscan friar of the Sacred Heart Province and the administrator of CUSA, an apostolate of persons with chronic illness and/or disability. The Gospel for the 27th Sunday of Ordinary Time touches upon something that might be described as a hot-button issue, not only for our own time, but it was also an issue for the time that Jesus lived in. The Pharisees approached Jesus and asked, "Is it lawful for a husband to divorce his wife?" They were testing him. He said to them in reply, "What did Moses command you?" They replied, "Moses permitted a husband to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her." But Jesus told them, "Because of the hardness of your hearts, he wrote you this commandment. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, no human being must separate." In the house, the disciples again questioned Jesus about this. He said to them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery." This gospel passage from the Gospel of Mark is the very first time that the Gospels refer to the issue of divorce. Matthew and Luke take up the issue and they embellish the words that Mark has included in his Gospel. Mark's Gospel is really rather straightforward. Jesus simply dismisses the Pharisees' question and maintains that divorce is not a possibility. And divorce and remarriage, a situation that Mark adds to the Gospel, is even more of a non-possibility. And this is the basis of the Church's teaching regarding the inviolability of marriage, about the fact that once people are married in the sight of God, they cannot be separated by a human judge. In order to understand this particular passage, it's important also to remember the cultural situation which Jesus lives in. For these people, the best marriage was a marriage between cousins, people who were members of the same family. Marriages were arranged by parents. Just as children could not choose their parents, children also cannot choose their spouses in this situation, in this culture. This was all arranged by the parents, and because of the fact that God has put his stamp on this, it is seen as an act of God. To divorce a wife, to set aside a woman who was a member of your family, would have certainly caused great difficulty. In fact, it would have led to bloodshed, as the wife's family, or your brother's family, would go to war with the husband's family. We're talking about clans here. We're talking about groups of people that were intimately related already by blood. Of course, that situation no longer exists in our world, as civil law has made it impossible for people to marry people of close relationships. As Jesus then teaches about this, it's also important for us to remember the very opening words of the Gospel. The Pharisees are testing Jesus. They're pushing him, trying to get him to trip up on his own words. This is another instance in which the Pharisees are raising an issue which is something that has been debated in all of their circles from the beginning of time, trying to get Jesus to contradict the law, to contradict what the writings of the sacred scriptures have to say. It is in this context, then, that we view this gospel. Jesus is adhering to God's law. Jesus even refers back to the very beginning, to the book of Genesis, when he quotes, "It is for this reason that a man leaves his father and mother and clings to his wife," straight out of the very first chapter of Genesis. Therefore, he says, what God has joined, man must not separate. Obviously, this is an issue that concerns many people in today's church. Conservative estimates show that perhaps 50% of marriages end in divorce and usually involve remarriage. This is an issue of fidelity. It's an issue of being faithful to God's law. It's an issue of being faithful to one another. And it's something that we cannot simply dismiss lightly. We have to take into consideration what Jesus teaches, what the church teaches, and we have to protect human marriage. This has become an issue in our own society that is constantly being debated. And once you give way in one little way to this particular mindset, you can see that there are all sorts of consequences. As we listen to the gospel then, we realize that this is a hard saying, that this is a difficult situation, but we also realize that this was God's intent. This was God's message from the very beginning. For more information regarding CUSA, please go to our website at www.cuson.org.